Hello viewers, and welcome yet again to another episode of Dinner Guide. I am your host, Chef Andy, and as usual, I've got some very beautiful items for you on the show today. We're going to be making a very simple vegetarian appetizer. So for some of you that are vegetarian, then this is the recipe for you. Now before I begin, I will of course mention that we're going to be using some peas and carrots. We're also going to be incorporating some potatoes, and we're going to be stuffing all this into some wonton cups, which I'll be able to show you how to make in a little while. But before I begin, I'll take you through the ingredients and then we can jump straight into the process. Now from the very front, you'll require about a tablespoon of some mixed spices. You'll also require about 2 cloves of garlic, about 1 teaspoon of tomato paste, and about half a lemon. You'll also require one large carrot chopped up finely, about half a cup of some peas, and about another half cup of some chopped up onions. You'll also require about 12 sheets of some wonton wrappers, some fresh, a few sprigs of some fresh chives. You'll also require 1 large potato chopped up very finely, some salt to season with, some oil to cook with, a bit of some peppercorns to crush, and last but not least, some water to aid us in steaming up our vegetables. You will also require a baking sheet or maybe a muffin tin of any particular size. So remember, this is pretty much going to aid you in holding the wonton wrappers together as they bake in the oven, making it very easy for you to turn them up into some very simple cups to be able to plate with. But before we begin, we will of course give you this chance to sit back and relax, and we'll catch you after a short break. And all you need to do is slide those in and set your timer for anywhere between 10 to 12 minutes. That should give them quite enough time to be able to hold their shape. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you've just tuned in, you haven't missed out on much. We're right about ready to begin the process. Now, first things first, we're going to begin by baking up our wonton cups. For this, you'll require some pre-made wonton sheets. If I haven't mentioned already, these are very easy to purchase at any particular Asian stores. So if you do not have an Asian store next to you, do make a point of using some phyllo pastry or even some puff pastry. It will actually serve the same purpose. So to begin, start by placing each of your wonton wrappers in individual slots of your muffin tin. Of course, making sure that you're using a non-stick pan for this particular recipe. Remember, if you don't actually have a non-stick one, you may actually require the aid of a bit of some butter, which will of course make sure that your sheets don't stick as soon as they're baked through. Proceed to also make sure that you leave a bit of room right at the center of each of your wonton sheets so that you can actually be able to stuff them very easily right at the end of the process. Also proceed to make sure that your wonton sheets have pretty much been dusted well enough to be able to dry up once they go into the oven. Remember, using soaked up wonton sheets or ones that have actually sat out of the refrigerator too long, those may actually not form the beautiful cups that you're looking for, and they may actually change the shape as soon as they begin to bake. Very important to also mention that you should have your oven already preheated by this stage. This is of course to make sure that you will actually save enough time while baking this in your oven. Right, so once those are done, be sure to open them up, making sure that they actually also touch the base of your muffin tin. And you can be able to achieve that by making sure that you press them down very firmly and proceed to check each and every one of your cups. As I mentioned, making sure that they all touch the base of your baking sheet. That way you will of course be able to make sure that they actually turn out into cups that you can actually be able to add your mixture into once they're fully baked. And once that's done, all you need to do is proceed to throw those into your oven. Now this I've set at about 160 degrees, so this is of course going to make sure that they don't color too quickly and that they of course continue to dry up and hold their shape without of course coloring too much over the top. And all you need to do is slide those in and set your timer for anywhere between 10 to 12 minutes. That should give them quite enough time to be able to hold their shape. And now all you need to proceed to do now is steam up your peas. So for that you will of course require a pot of some water. Right, so all you're going to do now is allow for your water to come to the boil, and once that has happened, you're going to pretty much proceed to steam up your potatoes and your peas, and then proceed to add them to the mixture that you'll be frying in the process. And now also onto a separate pan, proceed to begin to heat it up, and to that proceed to add some olive oil. You can also alternatively use some vegetable oil for this recipe, or even some unsalted butter. Now very importantly, begin by chopping up your garlic. Now using a sharp knife, proceed to chop those as finely as you possibly can. Now garlic, just to mention, is a very handy component of any particular stuffings or fillings. Remember, it actually brings out the best of flavors out of the ingredients that you make, and it will also give a very beautiful aroma to your mixture. You can of course also pound this into a paste, and it will actually give you just the same results. Right, once your garlic is chopped up, proceed to add that first into your hot pan. And all you need to do now is allow for your garlic to sweat out for about a minute to a minute and a half. Proceed to fry that up, making sure of course not to overcolor your garlic at this stage. And just at the point that your garlic begins to change color, proceed to add your red chopped onions. And continue to fry the mixture right up until your onions begin to sweat out. If your pan is of course a little hot at this stage, proceed to add just a little bit of water. And right after that, proceed to add your mixed spices and your tomato paste. Now doing this at this stage will of course give your tomato paste just enough time to break up in its consistency and give you a nice beautiful base for your sauce. Also be sure to reserve just enough water at this stage just to make sure that you can actually dissolve your tomato paste completely. Remember, using tomato paste can actually be very harmful to yourself, especially if consumed in a big amount. So always try and make sure to keep your tomato paste anywhere between a teaspoon to 2 teaspoons at most. Remember, this particular ingredient is of course very vital in cooking, but it can actually cause a bit of indigestion if used in excess. I'll proceed to mix that through. And all you need to do now is allow that to cook at a very low temperature, just to give it enough time for your liquid to completely evaporate and your flavors to combine. And while doing so, proceed to add your peas into your pot with the boiling water. You can of course cover that or proceed to cook with it uncovered. It won't really make a difference at this stage. And of course, to the pot or to the pan that you already have your onions and garlic, proceed to add your finely chopped carrots. Now carrots will also give a very beautiful sweetness to your dish at this stage. And it also gives a very beautiful color, breaking up the monotony of your peas from the green color of your peas, giving it a nice beautiful vibrant appearance even on plating. And at this stage we'll also proceed to add a little bit more water. This is of course to make sure that we have just sufficient water to aid in making sure that your carrots also soften up through the process of cooking. And once done, reconstitute all your ingredients to the center of your pan and allow that to cook at about low to medium heat. Proceed to also add your potatoes. So begin by draining your water from your potatoes. And very important to also mention, always try and keep your ingredients in a very similar size. So for the particular chopping that you will actually do for your carrots, proceed to do the same thing for your potatoes. This is of course to make sure that your potatoes and your carrots will also cook, and also it actually aids in making sure that your potatoes cook a little bit faster. So to the pot with the peas, of course, after steaming them for about 2 to 3 minutes, you'll proceed to add your potatoes. And proceed to season that with a bit of some salt. And allow that to come to the boil. And once that's done, proceed to also grab your chives. And with a sharp knife, proceed to chop that very finely. Now, chives is a very good addition to any particular fillings. It also complements the flavor of any particular onions that you already have in there. Also gives a very nice buttery finish to your sauce. And it of course also accentuates the color of your filling, just the same way as you would if you were to use some coriander. Proceed to add that to your pan with the carrots. Mix that through. Now this should actually take anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes to soften up your carrots, giving you just enough time to steam up or cook your potatoes, making sure that they're also soft, and your peas as well. And right about this stage, you should actually begin to check on your wonton wrappers. Be sure to make sure that they're not also, of course, coloring too quickly. And of course, once those are done and beautifully colored, we're also going to take them out of the oven. But before we do so, I will of course take this opportunity to give you a very, very short break, just allowing for some time for the carrot mixture to cook off, for the peas and the potatoes to cook till fully cooked. And then once those are done, all you need to do is proceed to combine them and cook them until all your flavors are combined. And we'll of course proceed to season with a bit of salt and pepper, and of course squeeze a bit of lemon juice towards the very end. But before we get there, we'll take a very short commercial break, and we'll see you after a little while. Very important that you add your last and final ingredient at this stage, which is your lemon juice. And you can achieve this by squeezing about half a lemon through a sieve, making sure of course that you don't incorporate the seeds. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you're just tuning in, you've pretty much missed out on very, very much. But remember, you can always recap by subscribing to our YouTube channel. That's BrandPlus TV Kenya. There you should be able to find this and many other beautiful recipes to try out in your very own home kitchen. But for now, I will of course bring you back to scratch by beginning by taking out our wonton wrappers. I'm just going to set those on the counter. And as you can be able to see from the color, nice beautiful golden touch of color on the sides. They've actually managed to set very nicely. And as I mentioned, this is particularly what we were looking for, turning them into a bit of some cups. And this will pretty much very much be able to hold on to the mixture once it's done. And of course, we also had begun by steaming up our potatoes and our peas. Now these I quickly rinsed out in some cold running water under the tap. And now that they're fully drained and now beautifully cooked, all we need to do is proceed to add those to our mixture with the carrots. And of course, with the aid of such tools such as a strainer, that should actually be able to allow for you to also cool them off very, very rapidly before proceeding to add them into your mixture. And this will of course always aid in making sure that you actually don't have them turning into mush, especially before you start filling them into your cups. And it also maintains that beautiful crunch in your vegetables, keeping them nicely, beautifully colored as well, and giving that beautiful al dente touch to them. Now once that is into your mixture, all you need to do is mix that through, making sure that your sauce incorporates and coats your potatoes and your peas. And of course, very important to also make sure that you should actually cook your liquid off completely. Otherwise, this could actually dampen the bases of your wonton cups, and it will actually begin to drip or make it very, very hard to lift them off a plate. So be sure to make sure that your wonton wrappers are nicely, beautifully crunchy before proceeding to add your pea and your potato mixture. Now as we near towards the very end of our filling, very important to remember to season. So I'll begin by seasoning with some salt. I'm also going to crush in some black peppercorns. Mix that through once more. And remember, for some of you who of course may want to save a bit of time when making this at home, you can actually be able to make your mixture way in advance, probably preheat it just before filling your cups up. You can also make your cups way in advance, but very, very important to also store them in a cool, dry place so that they actually don't dampen up and lose their consistency and their crunch. Right, now as soon as your liquid is almost completely absorbed, very important that you add your last and final ingredient at this stage, which is your lemon juice. And you can achieve this by squeezing about half a lemon through a sieve, making sure, of course, that you don't incorporate the seeds. And proceed to discard your seeds. Mix that through once more. And at this point, you can actually proceed to turn off your heat completely, but proceed to keep mixing through. And this will, of course, aid in making sure that your lemon juice carries right through the mixture and that the flavor is actually also well mixed through and very consistent. And once that's done, all you're left to do is to begin filling up your cups and proceed to plate. So be sure to have a plate ready at this stage. And of course, by the aid of a spoon, this will make it very much easier for you to fill up your cups. So proceed to spoon in about 2 tablespoons of your mixture into each cup, placing them straight onto your plate. And all you need to do is proceed to fill each cup as you did for the first one, right up until you get to the very end. Now, also something very, very handy to mention, especially for those of you who are very, very vegetarian. Remember, for some of you who may, of course, want to serve this to those of your guests or your diners that are not fully vegetarian, you can, of course, also make a very, very different filling by using such ingredients as meat, beef, chicken, fish, or even pork, depending on your preference. And this will, of course, also aid in making sure that you can actually be able to please all of your diners in one sitting. Now, for some of the cups that will, of course, try and tipple over, be sure to just sustain them by making sure that they sit or touch adjacent to the cups that actually hold shape. That should actually aid you in making sure that your cups also don't tipple over and spill out your mixture. Right, now as we get to the very end, remember you can also be able to make your own sheets, but it will, of course, take you a little bit more time than buying them ready-made. And as I mentioned, for those of you who've just tuned in, wonton wrappers can actually be purchased ready-made at any particular Asian retail stores. Now for the last and final cup. Straight onto your plate. And of course, once you're done, a light crushing of a bit of some black peppercorns right over the top should finish off your process very, very simply. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my very simple version of vegetarian wonton cups. I do hope you've had some fun with us on the show today. I will also remind you that you can actually be able to join me here as well on our stage or in our studio kitchen by simply texting the 5-digit code on your screen. Do write to us and give us a description of yourself. Tell us where you're from, and also give us an idea of what you'd like to learn on the show, just for us to be able to make sure that we can actually be able to accommodate you. And for those of you who are also eager and willing to share your comments, views, suggestions, or even compliments, you can be able to write back to us through the same number, or even by writing to us through our Facebook page, that's BrandPlus TV Kenya. And also to remind you, if you haven't subscribed to our channel already, that's BrandPlus TV Kenya on YouTube, do make a point of doing so that you can actually be able to stay up to date with every bit of the beautiful recipes that we share on from our kitchen studios. But from myself, it's a very, very simple goodbye. Thanking you once again for tuning in, and until the next episode, do stay blessed and see you soon.